My name is Olivia Green, and at 12 years old, I learned that being forgotten was not the same as being loved. It was a Thursday in late June when my parents sat me down at the dining table. Mom had her laptop open to a travel site. Dad stood by the sliding glass door, hands in his pockets, looking out at the backyard. "Olivia," Mom said, her voice light and easy, the same tone she used when telling me dinner was ready. "Your father and I have been talking. We're taking a trip, 6 weeks in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, Bali." I stared at her. "When?" "Monday, and you're staying here. You're 12, sweetheart, that's old enough." I looked at Dad. He shifted his weight and said nothing. They left me with $40 and a prepaid card that, as I would discover 2 days later, had never been loaded with a single cent. The Greens lived in a split-level house in Carmel, Indiana. Clean gutters, a mailbox shaped like a barn. A vegetable garden Mom kept mostly for her neighborhood blog, where she posted recipes she never actually made. She called herself a real-life homemaker to her 15,000 followers. Wholesome. Present. Devoted. My father, Dennis Green, was a project manager at a logistics firm. He left at 7:30 and came back at 6:15 and sat at the kitchen island eating whatever Mom had prepared or ordered. He was not a cruel man. He was a distant one. When Mom talked, he listened. When Mom planned, he followed. It had always been that way. I had been managing myself for years, making my own lunches since I was 9, setting my own alarm, forging Mom's signature on school forms when she forgot, which was often. "Olivia is very self-sufficient," she would tell other mothers at school pickup, smiling as if this were a compliment she had bestowed on me. She practically raised herself. She laughed when she said it. I had learned to laugh too. 2 weeks before they left, Mom walked into my room holding a travel magazine. Thailand was circled in red pen. "We need a real vacation," she said. "Just the two of us. We've been so stressed." "What about me?" She sat on the edge of my bed. "You'll be fine. You're not a baby. I've seen you handle everything." "I've handled everything because you weren't around to handle it." She blinked at me. I had surprised myself. Mom's expression shifted, not hurt exactly, more like inconvenience. "That's an ungrateful thing to say." She stood up. "We'll leave you money. You can order food. Don't be dramatic." On Sunday night, she placed two $20 bills and a green prepaid card on the kitchen counter. "That's for groceries. The card is for emergencies. Don't go overboard." She did not look at me when she said it. Monday morning, I stood on the front porch and watched their rideshare pull out of the driveway. Mom was wearing a linen shirt she'd bought specifically for the trip. Dad put the bags in the trunk. Neither of them looked back at the house. I waited until the car turned the corner. Then I went inside and closed the door. The first night, the silence was its own thing, not peaceful, heavy. I ate a bowl of cereal for dinner and went to bed at 9 o'clock. I couldn't sleep until after 2 in the morning. Day 2, I opened the refrigerator. Half a block of cheese, a few eggs, some condiments, one container of leftover pasta from the week before. I tried to load money onto the prepaid card through the app. Error, card not registered. I called the number on the back. The automated voice told me the card had never been activated. I counted my cash. $40, 6 weeks, 42 days. Less than $1 a day. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and called Mom. She answered on the 4th ring. There was music somewhere behind her. Water, maybe. A fountain or the sea. "Olivia, we just landed. What is it?" "The card doesn't work. It was never activated." "What? No, you're probably entering something wrong." "Mom, it's not registered. I called the number." "You have $40. That's enough for a while. We'll figure it out when we're settled." "Mom, it's $40 for 6 weeks. Stop catastrophizing." Her voice sharpened. "You are 12 years old and you are completely capable of figuring this out. I'll call you later." She didn't call later. By day 4, I had spent $11. I'd bought oatmeal, a bag of dried beans, a jar of peanut butter, and a loaf of bread. I was doing math in my head constantly. Dividing, subtracting, estimating. I stopped eating lunch. I ate small portions twice a day and tried not to think about food in between. Our next-door neighbor was a retired woman named Alina Voss. She had lived in the house beside ours for over 20 years. She had a garden in her backyard and a cat named Buttons who sometimes slept on our side of the fence. Eleanor was the kind of woman who waved from across the yard but didn't usually knock on doors. On day 6, she knocked on ours. "I noticed your parents' cars are gone," she said. "Everything all right?" I told her they were on a work trip. She looked at me the way adults do when they're deciding whether to push or let it go. "You look thin," she said. "I'm fine. Have you eaten today?" I didn't answer fast enough. "Come over for supper," she said simply. "I made too much soup." I said okay because I was too hungry to say anything else. At Eleanor's kitchen table that night, I ate 2 bowls of chicken soup and 4 pieces of bread. She sat across from me with her tea and asked gentle questions. I answered more than I planned to. By the time I left, she knew the truth. My parents were in Southeast Asia, they had left me alone, and the card they'd given me was useless. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment before I went home. "I won't say anything to anyone," she said. "Not yet, but I'm going to bring you food every day, and I want you to keep a record of all of this." "Why a record?" "Because sometimes," she said carefully, "the truth needs proof." Summer school started in week 2. Mom had enrolled me months ago, advanced writing, which I actually wanted to take, but I understood now that it also served another purpose. It kept me somewhere other than home. It kept anyone from asking too many questions. I arrived the first day in wrinkled clothes. I didn't know how to run the washing machine. My hair was brushed but not neatly. I was tired in the way that goes past sleep. My teacher was Mr. Callahan, a soft-spoken man in his 40s who wore reading glasses on a beaded chain. He noticed me. I could feel it the first day, the way his eyes followed me when I came in late, the way he paused when he called my name and I answered too quietly. On day 3 of school, I passed out. Not dramatically. I was sitting at my desk during a revision session when everything went slow and gray. My pencil rolled off the desk. I heard Mr. Callahan say my name from a long distance. When I came back, I was on the floor and someone had put a jacket under my head. The school nurse weighed me. She checked my eyes, my pulse, asked when I'd last eaten a full meal. She wrote things down in a way that made my stomach tight. "Where are your parents?" "Traveling." "Who's staying with you?" Silence. She and Mr. Callahan exchanged a look across the room. He came and sat beside me and spoke quietly. "Olivia, I need you to understand something. Whatever you tell me, I'm not going to pretend I don't hear it. You don't have to say anything, but I want you to know that I see you." It was the first time in weeks that I felt something in my chest that wasn't dread. That night, Mom called me. She'd heard from the school. "What did you tell them?" Her voice was cold and specific. "Nothing, I passed out. Because you're not eating properly. I gave you money, Olivia." $40, Mom. "That's all I had?" "Then eat less. Ration, you're smart enough to figure it out." "Mom, do not embarrass this family. Do you understand me? If I come home to some kind of mess, you will not like the consequences." "Are we clear?" I said yes. She hung up. I opened her Instagram that night. A photo of her and Dad at a rooftop restaurant in Bangkok. Fairy lights, cocktails, her smile wide and real. I found an old tablet in my desk drawer, a hand-me-down from the previous year. I opened the camera. "Today is day 9, I said, voice shaking only slightly. Mom posted a restaurant photo. I had oatmeal with water. The card still doesn't work. I saved the file. I didn't know why yet, but Eleanor had said, sometimes the truth needs proof. I recorded every morning after that, standing in front of the refrigerator, reading the date aloud. Showing the scale, I was losing weight, consistently, tracked in numbers I couldn't argue with. I read Mom's text messages on camera, word for word. I screenshotted her Instagram posts and narrated them. Dinner in Hanoi while I split a can of beans into 2 meals. Spa day in Bali while I figured out that boiling pasta with no sauce was still technically food. I filled a notebook too. Dates, meals, how I felt, what Eleanor brought me, what Mom said when she occasionally answered my calls. Day 17, Eleanor brought a casserole. I ate half tonight, saved the rest. Mom posted a beach photo from Vietnam. Caption, "Life is short, live it." She has 847 likes. Day 21, stomach cramps. I think I'm not getting enough protein. Eleanor looked worried when she saw me today. She asked again if she could call someone. I said not yet. Day 23, Mr. Callahan emailed home. Mom didn't respond. On day 26, Eleanor called the school. She didn't give her name. She said a student named Olivia Green needed someone to check on her. She told me afterward, sitting at her kitchen table with her hands folded around her mug. "I promised I'd wait as long as I could," she said. "But you're not okay, sweetheart. You're getting weaker." "I know. And I'm old enough to know that silence only helps the people who deserve to be uncomfortable." Mr. Callahan received the call and recognized immediately what he was looking at. He had been keeping notes of his own. He was a mandatory reporter. He filed an official report. The next day, a caseworker from Indiana Child Protective Services was assigned within 48 hours. Her name was Diana Mercer. Diana Mercer was a black woman in her late 30s who wore a gray cardigan and carried a canvas tote bag. She did not look official. She looked like someone's aunt. She looked like someone who had done this long enough to know that looking soft got more doors open than looking stern. She knocked on my door on day 27. "Hi, Olivia. My name is Diana. I'm a caseworker with Child Protective Services. Can I come in?" I stood in the doorway for a moment. I heard Mom's voice in my head. "Don't embarrass this family." Then I thought about day 9 and the empty box of oatmeal and the videos on the tablet upstairs. I stepped back and let her in. She walked through the house quietly, looked at the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, nearly empty except for what Alina had brought, saw the notebook on the counter, the wrapper from a granola bar, the bare pantry shelf. She turned to look at me, no judgment, just attention. "You have something to show me," she said, not a question. I went upstairs and got the tablet. Diana watched 3 of the videos without speaking. When she finished, she set the tablet carefully on the table between us. "These are important, Olivia. You were very smart to do this." Alina said sometimes the truth needs proof. Diana looked at me. "Alina is right." She paused. "Do you want to be safe?" I had been waiting 42 days for someone to ask me something I was allowed to answer honestly. "Yes," I said. "I do." Diana called my mother that evening. I was at Alina's by then, staying in the spare room on Diana's recommendation while the investigation continued. I wasn't in the room for the call, but Diana told me everything later. "Mrs. Green," Diana had said, "I'm contacting you on behalf of Indiana Child Protective Services. We've received a report regarding your daughter's welfare." Mom's voice had shifted immediately, warm, concerned, bewildered. The full performance. "Oh my goodness, is Olivia all right? What's happened? Your daughter has been alone for nearly a month. She's showing signs of malnutrition. There must be some confusion. We arranged for a neighbor, a woman from our church, to look in on her regularly. Can you provide her name and contact information?" A pause. "Of course. Let me find it. I'll send it right away." She never sent anything. Diana checked the neighborhood, the church directory, every avenue. There was no arrangement. No church neighbor. No one had visited Olivia Green in 27 days except an elderly woman next door who had figured it out on her own. Diana filed a legal request for financial records. 3 days later, the bank responded. The Greens had spent over $50,000 in 6 weeks. Hotels, flights, restaurants, resort packages, shopping. The prepaid card they had given me, 0 balance, never loaded. Diana sat across from me at Alina's kitchen table and showed me the printed statement. I looked at the numbers for a long time. "They left me $40, I said. "Yes, and spent $50,000. "Yes." I put the paper down. I did not cry. Something inside me had already finished being surprised. Mom called me 2 nights later. I was in Alina's spare room when my phone lit up with an international number. "Olivia." Her voice was careful, controlled, like she was walking on ice she wasn't sure would hold. "I need you to understand what you've set in motion." I didn't set anything in motion. I ran out of food. "You are making our family into a news story. Do you have any idea?" "The card didn't work, Mom." "You knew it didn't work?" Silence. "When I come home," she said, and her voice dropped low, "you are going to tell them you exaggerated, that you were anxious, that you made things seem worse than they were." Something that had been bending in me for 12 years stopped bending. "No, excuse me? No, I have 27 videos. I have your texts. I have the bank records that Diana already has copies of. I have Mr. Callahan's notes and the nurse's medical report and Alina, who will say exactly what she saw." The line went quiet. "A child," Mom said finally. "I know, and you left me alone for a month with $40 and a card you knew couldn't be used." I kept my voice even. "I'm not lying to fix something you broke." She hung up. I sat holding the phone, my hands shaking, but not from fear. from something closer to relief. 2 days before my parents' flight home, Diana came to Alina's house with a folder and a serious expression. "I want to explain what's going to happen," she said. "We have substantial evidence. The videos, the medical documentation, the financial records obtained through the subpoena, your mother's text messages. When your parents land, there will be law enforcement involvement. Will they be arrested? They'll be charged with child neglect and endangerment. In Indiana, that carries serious legal weight." She paused. "And Olivia, you won't be returning to live with them, not during the investigation and almost certainly not after." I thought I'd feel more things when she said that. I mostly felt tired. "When?" I asked. "When they get home. They've already posted about a welcome home dinner. Their friends, their colleagues, we'll meet them there. It's not about spectacle. It's about making sure we know they'll be present and that there are witnesses for safety." That night, I lay in Alina's spare bedroom and stared at the ceiling. Mom was somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, probably already planning what to post. She had no idea what was waiting on the other side. The welcome home dinner was at our house. 30 people. Mom had organized it from abroad, sent a group text, picked the menu. I watched from Alina's living room window as cars filled the street. Neighbors, coworkers, people from Mom's blog circle who had commented "gorgeous" and "you deserve this" and family goals under every photo for years. Through our front window, I could see balloons, a banner, the television showing a slideshow of their trip, beaches, temples, floating markets, jungle canopies, 2 smiling adults in every frame and never once a daughter. Mom moved through the room like she was born for it. She was. She wore a dress she'd bought in Thailand, her hair newly blown out, a glass of wine in her hand. Laughing, telling stories, performing, always performing. One of her friends asked about me. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read Mom's expression as she answered. Whatever she said, it explained me away. At 7:14 p.m., a dark sedan parked at the end of the street. Diana Mercer stepped out. 2 uniformed officers from the Carmel Police Department followed. I watched Mom open the front door for what she thought was another late arrival. Watched her smile freeze. Watched her try to step outside and close the door behind her, instinct, always control the frame, and watched Diana hold steady on the porch. "Mrs. Green, I'm Diana Mercer from Child Protective Services. These are Officers Hale and Ruiz. We need to speak with you." Mom's voice floated through the open window, still smooth, still performing. "A misunderstanding. Olivia has a tendency to, she's imaginative. There was a neighbor who, Mrs. Green." Diana's voice was calm and final. "Your daughter has been in temporary protective custody for 4 days. She documented the past month, beginning on day 1. And then the television behind Mom's guests changed. The slideshow disappeared. My face appeared on the screen, the same screen where Thailand and Bali and Vietnam had been playing for an hour. My voice, thin and tired, filled the room. "Today is day 9. I have $11 left." Mom posted a photo at a rooftop restaurant in Bangkok. I had oatmeal cooked in water. The card still doesn't work. The camera panned to the open refrigerator, nearly bare. The camera showed the bathroom scale, numbers I won't repeat here, but lower than they should have been for someone my age. I heard, even from across the street, the silence that fell over 30 people who had been laughing 2 minutes before. Day 17. Alina brought a casserole. Mom and Dad are in Vietnam. There are 47 likes on her beach photo. I'm learning that 2 meals a day is better than trying to stretch it thinner. Mom turned toward the room and tried to smile, tried to explain, tried to find one face that would stay with her. No one moved. Mr. Callahan was there. He'd been invited as a community guest, someone Mom knew vaguely from school events. He stepped forward and addressed the room quietly. "I'm Olivia's teacher. I filed the mandatory report. What you're seeing is not an exaggeration. I watched that child come to school for 2 weeks unable to stay upright." Mom turned on him. Then she turned on the guests. Then she turned on Dad. Dad, Dennis Green, stood by the fireplace and said nothing. He had not spoken since Diana appeared at the door. He looked at the floor and kept looking at it. Officer Ruiz moved toward my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Green, you are being charged under Indiana Code 35-46-1-4, neglect of a dependent. You have the right to remain silent." Mom's composure fractured. Not in the way people do when they're sorry, in the way people do when the audience they've spent their whole lives performing for finally turns. She was crying when they walked her out. Loud, desperate crying. The kind that wants witnesses. The guests stood silent on either side, a corridor of people who had driven to this house to celebrate her and who now stepped back to let her through. Dad walked with his head down. The police car doors closed. I watched from Aliner's window until the red taillights turned the corner and disappeared. The next morning, there was a knock at Aliner's door. A woman stood on the porch, early 40s, hair pulled back, a plain jacket over jeans, tired around the eyes but warm. She looked at me and her face did something complicated. "Olivia," her voice was careful, like she'd been practicing the steadiness. "I'm your aunt. I'm Claire Osman, your mom's sister." I had heard the name once, maybe twice, always followed by a silence that meant the subject was closed. "I didn't know," she said. "I want you to know that. I didn't know how bad it was. Your mother and I stopped speaking 4 years ago. When I found out," her voice caught. "Mrs. Patterson called me. She found an old file with my number." Claire looked at me. "I got on the first flight I could." I stood in the doorway for a moment, then I stepped back and let her in. She told me over Aliner's kitchen table why she and my mother had stopped speaking. She had told my mother the truth, that her obsession with image was making her someone her daughter couldn't reach. My mother had called her jealous and cut her off. "I was right," Claire said quietly, "and I wish more than anything that being right had mattered sooner." She had already filed for temporary guardianship. CPS approved it within 48 hours. My parents were charged with felony child neglect. They posted bail under strict conditions. No contact with me of any kind, all communication required to go through legal channels with CPS approval. Their lawyer tried. He called it a lapse in judgment, a cultural assumption that a mature child could manage. He pointed to my good grades, my teacher's praise of my independence, my own history of managing without much parental input. He said the word oversight 11 times in one filing. But you cannot argue with 27 videos. You cannot negotiate with a medical report documenting significant weight loss and malnutrition in a 12-year-old over a 5-week period. You cannot explain away a bank statement showing $50,000 spent abroad and $0 deposited onto the card left for a child. The story made local news within a week. Then it spread. Indiana couple charged with child neglect after European, no, Southeast Asian vacation. Their names were searchable in ways they would never recover from. Mom's blog was taken down. Her brand partnerships dissolved one by one over the following 2 months. Dad was placed on leave at his firm pending the outcome. The house went on the market 6 months later. Legal costs, I was told. Consequences. Living with Claire was different from anything I had known. Her apartment in Bloomington was small. 1 bedroom she turned into mine, a pull-out couch for herself, a kitchen with mismatched mugs, and a corkboard where she pinned things she wanted to remember. The first night, she made pasta and sat across from me at the table and asked me how I was. She waited for the answer. She did not accept fine. "I don't know," I said eventually. "That's honest." She refilled my glass of water. That's a good start. She was not perfect. She forgot things, ran late, burned toast twice a week. She told me from the beginning, "I'm going to get things wrong, but I'm going to be here and I'm going to try, and those 2 things I can promise." It took me nearly a year to stop waking up at night to check if there was food in the refrigerator. Old habits. The body remembers things the mind is trying to let go of. But slowly I started to sleep through the night. Slowly I stopped calculating how long a carton of milk would last. Slowly I started to believe that the people who said they would show up would actually show up. There was a trust fund. Grandma Osman, Mom's mother, who had died when I was 6, had set aside money for my education. The court had frozen it early in the proceedings. Mom and Dad had had access to interest over the years. The court reviewed what they had used. Claire sat me down and showed me the account balance. It was enough for college and then some. "It's yours," she said. "The court has protected it. No one can touch it." I looked at the number for a long time. "She spent $50,000 on one trip," I said. "Yes, and I have a college fund she never mentioned." Claire was quiet for a moment. "Yes." I sat with that. I did not feel what I expected to feel. I felt something more tired than angry. Something that understood, finally and completely, what I had always been to them. 6 months after the sentencing, 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, permanent felony records, and revoked parental rights, Mom sent me a letter through her attorney. I was 13 by then. I put it in a box on my closet shelf and didn't open it. When I was 18, I opened both letters. Her first one, and one that had come 6 months before my birthday, forwarded from an address in Arizona I was packing for college. Engineering program, full scholarship. A future I had built through years of work and stubbornness, and Diana Mercer asking the right question at the right time. I sat on my bed, in the room Claire had given me 6 years earlier, with my things on the shelves and her handwriting on the corkboard in the hallway, and I read both letters. The first, Olivia, I know that nothing I say is enough. I'm trying to understand how I became someone who could do what I did. My therapist calls it reenactment. I was left alone as a child too, and I told myself you'd be fine because I had needed to believe I had been fine. That's not an excuse, I know that. If you never want to hear from me again, I understand. But I'm trying to become someone different. The second, I heard you got a scholarship. I am proud of you in the way that people are proud of things they had no right to, and I know that. You did it yourself, all of it. I'm sorry it had to be that way. I put both letters back in their envelopes. Claire was in the doorway. You okay? I think I'm going to be, I said. I don't know if I believe her, but I held the envelopes in my hands. I think I'm okay not knowing for a while. That's enough, Claire said. That's more than enough. I didn't write back. Maybe someday, maybe not. But for the first time, it felt like a choice that belonged entirely to me. On the day I moved into my dorm, I stood on the campus quad and felt the wind and let myself trace the distance between who I was and who I had been. 12 years old, counting $40 on a kitchen table, trying to figure out how to make it last 6 weeks. Recording myself in front of an empty refrigerator because a leaner said the truth sometimes needs proof. Hearing Diana ask, "Do you want to be safe?" Standing in a leaner's kitchen and telling my mother I would not lie for her. 7 years of distance. 7 years of Claire. 7 years of learning that being cared for is not the same as being a burden. I pulled out my phone and sent Claire a message. Here, room is good. Thank you for everything. Her reply came in seconds. I am so proud of you. Always have been. I stood there for a moment. A girl nearby was looking at her campus map, turned around, looking for the library. I pointed her the right direction. We walked together for a while and talked about what we were studying and where we were from. The past didn't disappear. I don't think it does for anyone. But it had finally, completely stopped being in charge. People sometimes ask what I learned from all of it. The answer is the same every time. Silence doesn't protect you. It protects the people who hurt you. Speaking up is not betrayal. It is just the truth, finally allowed to breathe. My mother left me with $40 and a card that couldn't be used. She thought I was too afraid, too hungry for her approval to ever say what was real. She was wrong. And the life I'm living, this ordinary, complicated, fully mine life, is the only ending I ever needed. If you're still here, thank you for listening all the way to the end. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own home, if you've ever been told your pain was dramatic, if you've ever had to choose between loyalty and survival, then you already know why stories like this matter. Hit the like button if Olivia's story stayed with you. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss a story like this one. New stories every week, real, raw, and worth your time. And drop a comment below. Tell me, at what moment did you feel it the most? When Olivia first picked up that tablet, when the TV played her videos at the party, when Claire walked through that door, I read every single comment. Everyone. There's another story coming, and if you thought this one was powerful, wait until you hear what happens next. Click the next video. I'll be right there waiting.